This is Tech Talk Coast to Coast, and let me be clear off the top, this is not a bashing of Windows or Mac. This is not what's better, what's not, and all that. What we're going to do here is give you information. We got a request for what can either platform do that the other one can't. So I decided to bring in a couple of people that use it on a daily basis. And I actually use Windows sparingly now because I don't have that job anymore. But I do know a few things about what I have experienced on both platforms. Anyways, we got my buddy Matt from TTJTech.biz. I'm still not used to that. From the Tech Juggernaut. Most of y'all might know him from his free iOS classes that I help assist and make sure he makes no mistakes. Same with Michael Blackcock, who is here. Come on, Mike, give us a little plug about your podcast.
Technically Working. It is a friend and I who host a show where we are technically working. Imagine that.
Yeah. Oh, wow, you actually work sometimes? Oh, have to mark
tell anyone, they might get the wrong ideas.
Right? Matt, you use the iPad. That's why I brought you in here, because there may be some people that say, oh, you can't run your business or your daily life completely from an iPad. Well, I know you've been doing it for the last, 8 years now? And, and I've used that platform also. So, all right. So for screen reader users, off the top, this is not debatable. This is a fact. This is not fiction or somebody's thought. VoiceOver comes built in to every Apple device that you buy, period. You don't have to purchase a TalkBack license. You don't have to purchase a JAWS license. You don't have to purchase, I don't even know what it was called on Windows, or not Windows Eyes, because they got dissolved. But what was that one screen reader, Michael, that they had on the Windows mobile phones? What was that called?
Oh, MobileSpeak.
MobileSpeak. So you don't have to buy any additional software. People always complain about Apple devices costing more than usual devices, but yes, I mean, the old saying goes, right, Matt? You get what you pay for?
Well, absolutely. I would 100% say that that's true, and thanks so much for having me tonight. It's a joy to be here. I think the old saying, you get what you pay for is absolutely true. But also, I think now with the release of devices like the iPad A16 and the MacBook Neo, the narrative has to change now. Even 6 months ago, we could say, a Mac costs, 2 or 3 times the amount of a Windows PC. We can no longer say that because you can get a MacBook Neo for $599. And it's not only the VoiceOver inclusion that makes the difference, where you're not having to pay for, a screen reader. It's also the other kinds of things that are not really necessary, like antivirus software and so on. Now, I know there might be some folks who would try to argue with me on that point, and they would correctly point out that in the earthly sense there's no unsinkable ship. That's true. And they would also correctly point out that Windows now includes a lot more security tools than it used to. So, Windows is doing a lot better there. I shouldn't try to do Michael's job for him, I guess, but, I will admit that, Windows is doing better than they used to. But my feeling is, A, they had nowhere to go but up, first of all, and B, I still think the Mac OS and iPad OS, iOS are much more immune to the problems that still to this day plague many Windows users, especially iPad and iPhone users, because they truly have the walled garden of the App Store, at least here in the United States. We won't go into that discussion, but at least here in the US, we still have a mandatory App Store. Everything's got to be vetted, and so you stay in that ecosystem. It really is extremely difficult to penetrate that. I won't call it completely impenetrable, but it's all but.
Michael, the next two are kind of not all the way true anymore, but used to be. Complete support during recovery and setup, and the VoiceOver rotor. Now, the rotor is probably one that is not on Windows, correct? I mean, you could do your headings and all that, but if you want to do certain things, you got to turn off the JAWS cursor or whatever they call it now, the quick keys or whatever. Elaborate on that for us.
So, kind of. And you keep saying JAWS, and that's not Windows. And I think that's important to distinguish because JAWS is not the only screen reader on Windows.
Right, that is the next topic about how many screen readers you can have. But
Okay.
That's my mistake, and I will, correct that. But yeah, Windows, period. So yeah, go with that.
So your screen readers do have options to switch between. Maybe you want to adjust your speech rate or your speech volume, or you want to switch between headings and links and other navigation. You have those capabilities. The gotcha is that it is done differently depending on which tool you're using.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Windows does have full support now for setup and recovery. Mac has had it for years, but Windows does have it now.
Yep. You now have the out-of-box experience with Narrator specifically on Windows, so you can use Narrator to set up a new machine or completely reset it.
Now, what about in the pre-desktop, like BIOS setup, or do they still do that kind of thing on Windows, or have they sort of eliminated that nowadays on modern Windows PCs? Because when I was using PCs, back in the day, you could, depending on what you were doing, you could find yourself spending a considerable amount of time in the what they called, system setup or BIOS or, whatever, changing settings and so on. And of course, there was no screen reader there.
Cliff, why didn't you tell me I was going to have to answer all the hard questions? So yeah, the BIOS is still inaccessible. You cannot control that
correctly.
Now, this is the one that we know there's no debate on. Michael, you're going to have to, even though you don't like to, agree with me on this one. Seamless Apple ecosystem integration. Now, I know they have tried to get where you can text on a PC from your iPhone or whatever the case may be, but for Apple, for the last, let's say, 10 years, it just works. I can copy something from my iPhone and paste it on my Mac. I can copy something from my iPad and paste it to my iPhone. I can text an Android from my Mac if I so choose. AirDrop. What else do we have, y'all? Sharing, putting my phone next to Michael's. Not that I want to, but I can share my contact with them or whatever. So that's stuff that PC can, or Windows, I should say, cannot do. Correct?
To the best of my knowledge, no, not as easily. And yes, I begrudgingly have to agree with Cliff on this one. And it's one of the things that keeps me honestly using a Mac and being able to engage with my iPhone, copy something on my Mac, and it's available to paste. And for people who don't realize, that's not limited to text. If I have a file on my iPhone that someone texted me, I can copy that to the clipboard and then I can paste it in my downloads, and all of a sudden I have that file in my downloads, and it just works like magic.
Yeah. I certainly don't like to agree with Cliff any more than I absolutely have to, but absolutely that's one of the beautiful things about the Apple ecosystem is the integration of hardware, software, and services, and they truly have the corner on that. It's incredible how well that integrates.
Now, this one is a little interesting because I know JAWS does this even though it's a layered command, but OCR built directly into VoiceOver.
OCR is not built directly into VoiceOver, is it?
Well, technically it is, because on the Mac, I can do VO Shift L on a picture and it will describe it to me.
It will describe it to you. It doesn't OCR it though, does it?
Well, go ahead, Matt.
Well, OCR, so there's a couple of things. When you get the text recognition, not so much image description, but text in an image, when you use text recognition and when you use that text, live text, that's the term, where you I think I might have the wrong term now, but it's where you point at a text with your camera and it will read it, and not only will it read it, it will turn it into editable, searchable text.
That is live text.
That is OCR. And one of the things that Apple has listed, and I can say it because they've said it, I have not tested it, and I wouldn't be able to talk about it if I had, but they've stated that in iOS 27, there is improved support for reading and editing PDFs with VoiceOver. It's one of the 200
One of the things
features
on this list, too, Matt, is buttons without labels, tables, and charts.
Right, because your image description will automatically read many of those with VoiceOver. It's not a perfect system, but it is a system, and it does help quite often.
Okay, so this one is a little spotty. It says trackpad gestures to control your system, which, I mean, Windows has touchscreens, which Macs do not have. So that's kind of a vague comparison, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, Macs don't have it yet, although... Anyways, I think Apple, if you use your Mac that way, I personally do not use my Mac with the trackpad, but I know a lot of people that do. And what is handy about that is you can easily navigate the Mac using your trackpad with VoiceOver using similar commands to what you use on iPadOS and iOS.
One thing we did forget about is the continuity piece of the camera, being able to use that as a camera on your Mac. You don't have one that you like, so... All right, well, Windows can do that, Mac can. Michael, this is your area. For screen readers, we already discussed this, I think, based on the fact that it has multiple screen readers, NVDA, JAWS, Narrator. Is Searles or is System Access still around?
I think so, but I don't know for sure. But, you have NVDA, you have Narrator, you have JAWS. Those are the three primary screen readers on Windows. I feel like I'm forgetting something on there as well. So you do have the choice to use one of those three screen readers.
Right. Advanced screen reader scripting. Because of course Apple doesn't open its API up just to just anybody. A couple of these screen readers that we're talking, well, actually just one of them, right? NVDA is the only open source one, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Well, it says, this came from ChatGPT, says JAWS scripting is very powerful. Ooh, we're scared now.
Apple scripting is very powerful as well, just saying.
It says Windows remains dominant for government systems, corporate applications, legacy business software. Many were designed specifically around JAWS support, which is fair and true, since JAWS stands for Job Access with Speech. We cannot deny that.
I think one could easily push back on the corporate software, though, a little bit, because of the rise of cloud computing and a lot of corporate apps. So I'm thinking at a recent employer, like 6 years ago, all of our tools were web pages we would load in Chrome. They weren't actual programs that we would install on the Windows machine. They were web pages you would load, you would log into one web page, and that would log you into everything. And I think that makes the argument for a Mac in the workplace a little easier in some instances. And then I go use VoiceOver on the web and I say, I want my Windows machine back.
You're right about that, because when I was working for Target Corporate, and we had to use a new Outlook before the public even got it. And yeah, everything, like you just said, was web-based. So, it's not an application.
Yep.
It says wider variety of drivers and support. What do you think about that?
I can plug most things into my Mac and it works. I don't have to go find a driver or go find software to run that particular thing. Often you plug it into the Mac and it just works.
Matt, why don't you give us a little, and I mean a little because I know how long-winded you are, but why don't you give us a little spiel on the consensus that you can't run your life or business, for lack of a better term, 100% from your iPad? Because there's a lot of people out there that think you cannot do that because you can't, do this, that, and the other. Of course, writing code does require a Mac, so that's probably the one thing that you can't do on the iPad. But what about the rest? Can you create an invoice? Can you text somebody? Can you get on Facebook? What can you do with the iPad? Tell us about it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. First of all, there are, 1 or 2, 3 things here or there that are very targeted, like coding, like, programming, that sort of thing. Although you can do a degree of that with Swift Playground, but there are limitations compared to Xcode. The way that I really like to look at it is that you have to find the device that best fits your life. And maybe that's an iPad, maybe that's a Macintosh, maybe it's both. I praise God, I've got both devices, 2 iPads, in fact, and then, all the other Apple devices too, we won't even get into. But, so I think it's going to be different for each person. But for me, I truly find the iPad to be the most versatile device in existence. because when I want to use that device on my couch, on my back deck, at the restaurant, and I want to hold it up and use it like reading a book or watching a movie, playing a game, browsing the web, I can do that. But less than a minute later, I can have it in a laptop configuration with a mechanical keyboard. I can be writing documents and creating advanced spreadsheets. And I can be doing all of that with a mechanical keyboard, which will make typing a lot quicker. And then a minute later, I could go from a mechanical keyboard to a musical digital keyboard, 88 keys, playing the piano and writing music or editing audio and video. And because you have both the rear and front cameras, because you have cellular data on the iPad, so you don't even have to have Wi-Fi in many situations, it is truly, I believe, the most versatile device. And you combine that with the fact that now, as of iPad OS 26, we have full menu bar support. We have full windowed app support so that we can work with, 5 or 6 windows on our screen at the same time. Now, my personal feeling is, as a voiceover user, I don't think I'd want more than 2 or 3 apps at most on my screen at one time. But you can do it, and you can, minimize and maximize and, use the menu bar, and not only the menu bar, but the keyboard commands that go with the menu bar. Cliff, we always call the keyboard king because he uses all the keyboard commands that it's, and that's how he likes to do things. And so, Cliff, you were very excited to see all of those keyboard commands brought to the iPad. So I think that versatility is a key factor. And yes, I run my business, design websites, write invoices, all the other things I mentioned and more from the iPad, and have done that for a number of years. I do have a Mac, and I'm very excited about my MacBook Neo. I think it's a great device, and I truly think it's a disruptor. I honestly believe the industry is still in shock over it and scrambling to try to meet it and beat it. And I don't think anybody's going to. I think the one that stands the best chance, honestly, is Google with its Google Book. And I don't believe that'll be better than a MacBook Neo, but at least it's a respectable answer to it. But it'll be interesting to see because I don't think it's been released yet.
It hasn't. That comes out in September, so they say. But
yeah.
Better PC gaming, Michael, better hardware choices, better upgrade choices. These are things we cannot deny because Apple has, in the last, I guess what it's been 6 years. If you buy it, that's how it stays. You can't get an internal, you can't swap out the internal drive. You can't upgrade the RAM and stuff like that. So also purchasing from hundreds of manufacturers. Of course, they got, they got HP, Dell,
right.
Sony, all those. So
yeah, you can pick the manufacturer, and there's different form factors for computers as well. So, for example, my wife has a Surface Pro, and what I like about her computer is if she's at work, she can just grab that off the keyboard and use it as a touchscreen Windows machine. And it has what I have told Apple, and I'm telling them again because I know they listen to Cliff's podcast because that's all people have to do at Apple is listen to Cliff's podcast, and that is, if you add cellular to any of your Macs, I will buy 2 of them because that's what keeps her on Windows. And if I could have cellular on my Mac, I'd be super happy about it. But on Windows, you do have those different form factors, which opens up the world to different technologies that are available for Windows users. Whereas when you have the Mac, you just, and I say this not negatively, but factually, you just have access to what Apple gives you.
Now, some of the folks at Apple might be listening to Cliff's podcast. The really smart ones and the really advanced ones are actually listening to TTJ Tech Talk, But what I would... I would be curious, Michael, just from a standpoint of that discussion. You mentioned that if Apple added cellular data to a Mac, you would buy 2 of them because you really like the Mac and you want that cellular data and the flexibility presumably that offers. But if you were my customer, my immediate question for you, and not in an argumentative way, but genuinely curious, my immediate response to you would be, what is it that you couldn't do with a cellular iPad that you're doing with your Mac? Or is it just a preference?
Corporate applications that have been built for the Mac but have no mobile equivalency. So her employer has some applications that they use. They have Mac and Windows versions, but they don't have mobile versions of it.
Okay, so there are very targeted situations where there's no iPad app at this moment. And so that's probably not going to be the average person, but definitely it's a fair statement, because there are those situations out there where you do need a desktop environment. Absolutely. Yep.
And audio hijack. Unless they change it, I don't know.
Audio hijack and loopback. Loopback needs to come to the iPad. For real. Not loopback, I'm sorry, Farrago.
Farrago. I mean,
I'll tell you this right now. Anybody, and I don't mean this I hope I'm not doing something that would offend the folks at Rogue Amoeba, because I really, really like them. They're a great group. But I'm going to go ahead and say this. Anybody that's listening to this, if you like the iPad as much as I do, and you use Audio Hijack or Loopback or any of those products, email Rogue Amoeba very lovingly. Be kind, be godly, be uplifting. Ask them to bring it to the iPad, because I'm telling you, they can do most of it. I don't know. I'm not a developer. I don't know if they can do all of it, but I know they can do some of it, and it's just a matter of prioritizing. I think if they get enough requests for it, we might see it.
And to be fair, my equivalent for Farrago on the iPad is Backpack Studio.
Absolutely. I'm with you 100%. Yep. And it's come a long way in the new
It has. I just don't like the subscription price because I'm cheap.
Well, that's a you problem, not an iPad problem.
So you're telling me that Surface Pros, they have cellular data?
Yes.
Okay, because that's something I actually did not know. That's
she
interesting.
Has a 5G Surface Pro. It's really funny. We went into Best Buy to buy it, and they're like, "Oh, they discontinued that." And she pulled it up on our phone. She's like, "No, they just released one like 2 weeks ago that has cellular." So that was a pretty cool feeling. But yeah, it's the Surface Pro, and it has AT&T 5G.
Okay. Now, one thing you did not mention, even though we talked about it before, but it's important for people to know this, Michael, especially because you use it on a daily basis. Remember the number one thing that you mentioned on the previous podcast that Windows does not have and probably never will?
Numpad Commander?
No. Well, that would be nice.
Yes, it would. As I use to navigate Mac OS with one hand while I'm talking, Numpad Commander is amazing. I love that tool.
I cannot remember what you said, but it had to do with something that you do with Reaper that you cannot...
Item chooser.
There you go. That's what it is.
Yep. And there are some innovative people out there that are making things similar to Item Chooser, again, going back to that open source environment, specifically for NVDA. So that may not be as big of a issue, but Item Chooser on the Mac with VoiceOver is just so smooth. It is amazing.
Now, one thing I'll mention, and it's probably not even a priority to Apple based on the fact that we have the unified clipboard, but within Windows and JAWS specifically combined with those two, I have to mention, there are, I think, 5 different kind of clipboards. I mean, they got a Windows 11 clipboard, they got the unified clipboard, they got not the unified, but the JAWS clipboard and stuff like that. But basically, like we mentioned, because you can paste stuff across Apple devices, that's not even an issue with Apple. So, but some would make an argument.
So I don't use any of those clipboards. I have one utility on Windows that I use, and one of these days I'll get enterprisey enough to vibe code a version for the Mac. But there's an amazing utility on Windows that if you're using Windows and you do anything with your clipboard, you should go download right now and implement it into your workflow. And it's called Ditto, D-I-D-O. It is a clipboard manager, and it allows you to keep, I have mine set to the last 500 things that I copied to my clipboard, and I can bring that up with one keystroke, and then you can synchronize that between Windows machines if you need to, using some tools. Right now, it's not cross-platform, but it is open source as well, and that's the only clipboard I use on Windows now.
Nice. There's another tool that Windows doesn't have, but it's nice on the Mac is the I can't think of it. It's I'm gonna have to go in here and look because this is bothering me. Keyboard Maestro. That's a great tool because you can create little keyboard shortcuts, and they even have a universal clipboard type thing where you can, I think, up to 1,000 if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So
something like that. Yeah.
If you have both systems and you're looking for one that is good for word processing, Like, let's say if you're going to write a professional-looking document with headings and whatnot, I use Microsoft Word on Windows, but I'm wondering about the Mac, if there's an equivalent for that that's just as easy to use, or indeed if Microsoft Word is also usable on the Mac. I have Office 365, but I haven't tried the Mac versions yet, so...
It really pains me to say that Cliff has actually convinced me to start playing with Pages more. It's not 100% there, I feel like, and I do often fall back to drafts and writing my documents in Markdown just because that's easier to navigate for me. But Pages is pretty good as well. Thanks to Cliff. That hurts to say.
I use Pages on both the Mac and the iPad. Though admittedly, I use it more on the iPad than the Mac, just because that's the device that I use more. And I find it to be absolutely fantastic. It is incredible the things that I've been able to do with it that I just never even really gave much of a thought before. So when we're talking about headings and complex formatting and, adding document sections and page numbers and all sorts of things. It's really incredible how well Pages works with the iPad. And as I said, my Mac Pages use is not, I used it a lot before the iPad was really a thing. So from about 2009 to probably when Pages on the iPad got really good with VoiceOver was probably around, I'm going to say 2012. It was released in 2010, but it didn't have all the features. I'd say 2012, and ever since it's been building. So, from that period of time, I used Pages on the Mac. I actually wrote a book using Pages on the Mac and then did a revision and a rewrite of it on the iPad in Pages later. So all of my serious professional document creation is done in Pages on both the Mac and the iPad. And the one thing I would say to you, you said, or is Microsoft Word a viable option on the Mac? Yes, it absolutely is. Where I think you're going to find Pages to be a stronger option is, I actually like the features and the layout of Pages better anyhow, but that's a separate discussion. From an accessibility standpoint, I think where Pages is going to be the stronger option is that Apple has taken the time to design custom rotor options for Pages. Now, again, that's really an iPad perspective. I don't know how much of that carries over to the Mac. I know there's a lot of keyboard commands for Pages on both the Mac and the iPad, so you definitely have a lot of options. But definitely comparing Word to Pages on the iPad, and I've used, because I'm a tech person, I've tried these different things, Word and Google Docs and so forth, and what I find is that Pages has the most accessible environment. That's not to say that Word's not accessible, because that would be false. It is accessible. But they've just added a lot of custom options for accessibility to the Pages app and its counterparts, Numbers, Keynote, and so forth.
I've used Word on the Mac, and it's better than it was before 3-4 years ago. You just have to remember that it's not going to have the ribbon and the features and the options that you're used to in the same spot. You kind of have to learn the lay of the land, and then you'll be fine, because the same options for the ribbon are there, but it's not going to be laid out the same because it's on a Mac versus a PC.
If you want to, you can have both, because like there's a few programs that make parallels. It's the best. It lets you run Windows on a Mac, and that's what I use. I have a MacBook Neo, just literally run Windows in parallel, so I can use both VoiceOver on the Mac and Windows screen readers, and that might be the best option if you want the advantages of both. And also with the I have it literally set up where all of the keys on the keyboard are what you would expect in Windows. There's just a few settings to that. There's a tutorial on AppleVis on how to do that, and then also I think that an advantage of the Mac, especially the laptops, is they seem to have a lot more powerful processors than like a lot of Windows laptops, and like especially if you go like on the higher end, like the M5 Max and stuff. I mean, like you can like beat any Windows laptop and still have like great battery life, and it'll be like thin. It won't be like a really thick like workstation laptop.
What you're experiencing there is the fact again that Apple makes the hardware and the software, so they're able to squeeze every ounce of power, all of the memory out of they're able to just do a better job of that because they make both. If I'm being completely honest, there are processors on the market that are faster than Apple's M5 processor. I'll be honest. I'll tell truth when truth, there are processors that are faster than M5, but I don't think you'll find a better combination of speed and efficiency and the device running cool, getting the most done with the fewest errors, all that. I think that the M series and even the A series has it hands down there because, again, Apple makes everything so they can tailor the software to the hardware and vice versa. To go back to your other point, could somebody on our panel clarify? Because you brought up an excellent point about parallels. However, the last time I tried parallels for someone that wanted to use it, it did not work with VoiceOver. Is that still true, or have they made it work with VoiceOver now?
So, yes and no. There's a handy utility on the Mac called VOCR, which allows you to OCR the screen. And once you get VOCR, then you can VOCR each screen, and you can actually set it up to automatically do that. And then it'll let you walk through the install process. So yes, a blind person can independently install Parallels, but yes, they also need a third-party utility to make that happen at this time. Because Apple has not built in screen OCR capabilities into VoiceOver as of yet.
Okay. And Parallels, to me, putting Windows on a Mac is like putting Eloquence on an iPhone. You just don't do it. But that's just my opinion. Some people love Eloquence on their phones. Even Android people do it. But, I'm not going to lie. When I first started using my Mac back in 2010, I did use DM Fusion. It was excellent. And I have no idea why they kind of dropped off the radar for that. And I used Windows on my Mac up until 2016. When I finally tackled that monster of Safari and mastered it, then I dumped Windows for good because there's no need it. Because the only reason I still had Windows was because I was using, blast from the past, Michael, Internet Explorer on the Windows just for my navigation on the web. So
what's that? I'm so young, I don't remember what Internet Explorer is.
But that's the only reason that I use Windows on my Mac back then. But I haven't did it in over 10 years, so I'd never do it again. I don't have no need to. So,
man, just
the funny thing is that most of the Windows users didn't even like Internet Explorer, even the Windows fans.
Good thing, off topic, did you know there's a whole generation of kids right now that are 18 years old, only saying it because my brother is 18, who have never used Internet Explorer? That is...
Well, that's what I have to go. Everybody that had the opportunity to use it used to install, what was it? First it was Netscape, and then Firefox, and Chrome, and yep.
So I would like anyone to comment briefly about Braille support.
So I use Braille on the Mac not as regularly as I do on Windows, partially because of that. Braille focus can jump all over the place. Often I'm doing presentations, and I will connect my Braille display to my iPhone before I'll connect it to my Mac, because I know what I'm going to get on the iPhone. And I feel like on the Mac sometimes I'm like, how did you get over there? Like, I know where you are, but where is this coming from? And that's disorientating when you're doing a presentation.
What Braille display are you using, Michael?
I have the BI40X.
Okay, because I used the Mantis on the Mac with no issues. And there used to be a Braille display that was specifically built for the Mac. They went belly up in some years recent. It was funny, too, because my counselor was going to buy it for me, and a week later they went bankrupt. But anyways, it was the Varia Ultra 40. And it was a great device. Did you use that one?
I have never used that one.
Yeah, Varia Ultra. It was specifically built for Mac OS. There are some newer features in the beta that I can't talk about that are supposed to improve Braille support. I hope it does. Right now, I don't have a Braille. Well, I do have a Braille display. I just got the HumanWare e-reader from my library. I'm about to play with that as soon as we get over here. So don't talk so long, Michael. But anyway, but yeah, Braille support is one of the biggest complaints that people do talk about, and that has been heard. So,
big concern I have regarding the Mac is support for Google Sheets and Google Docs, because I'm a freelancer and I have a lot of clients who use those, and I've heard, although I haven't had a chance to really experiment and try it, that sometimes using Google Docs and Google Sheets on the Mac is a little more challenging than, say, on a Chromebook or Windows. So I'm wondering if people have any thoughts on that.
well,
I think it is no more challenging than it can be on Windows.
I was about to say
Okay.
because they're web based. They're not specific apps on your PC or your Mac. They're web based.
Now,
Right.
where people run into problems, and this is something that's going to be the case with any operating system, is people will say, I'm only going to use Safari. I'm not going to install Google Chrome or a variant of it. And I have found Google Sheets, in my opinion, this is not the opinion of everyone, but in my opinion, Google Sheets works better in a Chromium-based browser with VoiceOver. You do have to, it is encouraged to turn on screen reader support and Braille support, even if you're not using a Braille display. In VoiceOver, then we use Google Sheets for work every day, and I can do it on the Mac without any problems.
And Michael, normally I would challenge your assertion there with regards to, having to use Chrome instead of Safari, but in that instance, it makes perfect sense because Chrome and Sheets, Docs, and Slides are all made by the same company, so why wouldn't you use the browser that ought to, at least in theory, work best for them? So yeah, I think I would agree with everybody not having used it on the Mac, but just the idea that it would be no different than any other operating system because it is web-based. The only place you're going to see something different is if you were to use an iPhone or an iPad and download the Google Docs app or the Google Sheets app. Other than that, yeah, web-based, probably some challenges, but also workable.
Okay, and the other question I had unrelated to is, what happens if you come across a situation where something just doesn't work with VoiceOver on the Mac, and it's probably because of the way the app's developed? On Windows, you have like 3 or 4 screen readers. Do you immediately go back to your iPhone, your iPad to see if the app works better there?
What I would, if it comes from the App Store, it's not going to have that problem. So why don't you give us an example of an app that doesn't work for you on the Mac that that you think?
Yeah,
that
I think she's more being hypothetical, right? I mean, you don't
Yes.
have a specific app that you. Yeah, I think one of the things to keep in mind is that when Apple releases guidelines for app developers, which, to my understanding, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but to my understanding, even if you're not going to put your app in the Mac App Store, you can still use the developer guidelines that Apple has, because there's still going to be benefit to that. And one of the things that they issue in those developer guidelines is the frameworks to make an app accessible with VoiceOver. So I've run across numerous iPhone and iPad apps, and probably Mac apps as well, which, the developer had never heard of VoiceOver. They didn't deliberately do anything, but they just followed Apple's guidelines, and the app was accessible anyway, because that's what Apple empowers them to do. You have to work pretty hard to make an app that's not accessible with VoiceOver. And don't get me wrong, sometimes it happens because people are trying to reinvent the wheel. They want to do their own thing and not use Apple's frameworks, or because it's a very, very graphics intensive game.
I
or
think
something.
we can add that to the list of something that Windows has. I mean, we already made that point, but that even emphasizes it to me, that if there is an app on the Mac that does not work with VoiceOver, it's one and done. On Windows, I mean, say I can't read, I'm being facetious here because it's not true, but say I can't read the cell coordinates of Excel with JAWS. I could turn off JAWS and turn on NVDA or Narrator. I mean, that's not true, because JAWS, and this is the only time that I will give Windows credit, but JAWS and Excel go together like peanut butter and jelly. There's no better match on Windows than those two.
But then the other side of that coin is that if it's VoiceOver and it's not accessible, there's an easy recourse, which is going to get to the answer to your question, Rebecca. I did a lot of side trips there to get to this answer, but the recourse then is you email the developer very kindly say, good afternoon. Have you heard of VoiceOver? Because I am totally blind. I really like the idea of your app, but it doesn't do X, Y, or Z. And I know Apple gives you the tools to make it accessible. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that. And some of them will come back and say, no, we don't. Thanks for contacting us. Bye. But others will come, and more often than not, they'll come back and they'll say either, we've been working on that. Thanks for letting us know. Or we've never thought about it, but now that you've brought it up, we will work on it.
Right, and you could argue, you could apply the same thing to Chromebooks or Windows. That's a fair point.
Sure. Yeah. Obviously, we're all coming from different places here. I myself am a full-time Apple user and mostly iPad, but also a good bit with the Mac, especially now that I got the new toy, the Neo. Michael is sounds like, an expert in both platforms, so he's contributed something to that. Cliff, I don't know what he contributes. No, I'm just joking. But I think what hopefully you're seeing from all of this is that this comes down to personal preference. We can spend all day telling you why we think that one thing is better than the other, and hopefully we've given you the tools and the resources to become more interested in it. We offer a number of free classes for folks who want to learn. We also offer paid one-on-one training as well, but we offer a lot of free classes. We follow the school year schedule, so we will be announcing new classes starting in we start them in about October. We'll be announcing them in late August, and we go right through to the end of May. We just finished up a season here, and we have all of those prior episodes from last season available on our podcast. And so you want to also check out my website, because I'm going to be very, very jealous if all the hits go to Cliff's website. So you want to check mine out too. But no, I'm kidding. He's a brother in Christ and an excellent friend, and we work together on most projects. So check out stiritup.com.
And to be fair, I stole my website template from yours anyway. So I mean,
well, that's true. That is true. But check out stiritup.com with a U, but also check out ttjtech.biz. So that's Tango Juliet, and then TECH like tech. All right. .biz, Bravo Indigo Zulu. So it's not a .com, remember, it's .biz, ttjtech.biz. And we have a podcast page, all of the previous classes, all the voiceover classes for the iPhone, all the more with the Mac, which are also, of course, on Cliff's podcast, Tech Talk Coast to Coast, but we have them on mine as well. All of the more with the Mac, JP Reloaded, all of our iPad courses, they're all there. So you can get caught up. You can start learning now.
My wrap up is, again, this is not a bashing of Windows or Mac or the iPad or any device for that matter. Apple, Microsoft, Google, it's even Samsung, because they have their own version of TalkBack on cell phones and stuff like that. It's good to have choices. And it's good that they all have accessibility in mind now, because 10 years ago, we didn't have all these choices. We didn't have the accessibility built in like we do. I mean, Apple had started it, but it wasn't there. And I am an Apple user 98% of the time, but I do have a PC that sits on my desk on a hutch on the back of my desk that sits right above my Mac Studio, because I offer paid training, like Matt said, and we have some free stuff. And if somebody wants to know how to do something with JAWS, I'll dust it off and, fire the PC up and give them that training, because I was born on JAWS. That was my first screen reader. I can't deny that. But when I started using a Mac, I never wanted to go back. I had to, because I worked for Target Corporate for 3 years. And that's the operating system that they gave me. I requested a Mac, and they flat out told me no, like they couldn't afford it. But anyway, we have choices, and they're all good. And no choice is wrong. Whatever works for you. This was specifically by request, because I got 3 or 4 emails asking, what can a Mac do that Windows can't? What can Windows do that a Mac can't? So I brought on these panelists, thanks to Michael Babcock, who's no longer here, and Matt from ttjtech.biz for sitting in on this. But this is all about information. No bashing, no negativity, No saying this is wrong and that's wrong. None of that. This is information to help you make your choice, because your choice is what's best for you. What your budget can allow, what your talents want to explore, whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, it's all about you, your choice, and what works for you. Again, I'd like to thank the panel of Michael Babcock and Matt Baldridge from ttjtech.net. And of course, check out Michael's podcast of Technically Working. Those new episodes launch every Monday, unless he takes the weekend off. And of course, you can check out me at stirredup.com, my YouTube page, any podcast platform, including Matt's favorite, Spotify, and anywhere else that you can find your podcast. Thanks for joining us, everybody.